Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia Pon, for this interesting presentation with some practical aspects, applications about sustainable neighborhood from the spiritual perspective as a spiritual path. So you started from some definition of sustainability and then asking yourself and ourselves also what is the definition of neighborhood? Who is my neighbor? Speaking also about the Human Development Index that is in some kind of alarm that in last 2 years fallen back to the level of 2016, which is important issue. And later speaking about this Christian perspective of neighborhood, humanizing reality, and finally move to Climate Action Plan 2050 and the situation in Hong Kong, showing using some examples of how this sustainability can be applied, and you use your personal experience and also passion, how walking and rambling, using also the reference of Michel de Certeau, the practice of everyday life, can be applied in the context of Hong Kong. So thank you very much for this presentation. We have some time for questions. Please also formulate your questions to Dr. Cynthia Pon on chat box, or formulate them turning on your microphone, but also turning on your video so that we can see your face when you formulate the question, please. Okay, so let us move to the first question to Dr. O'Brien from the chat room. For number 5, accessing the dialogue, and number 6, develop mechanisms for when the dialogue fails. Any recommendations for better development of the mechanism? And then also number 3, how to achieve inclusiveness, openness, and mutual learning. This question was asked by Jimmy Sham. So Dr. O'Brien, would you like to answer these questions?
I'd like to have a little try. In terms of developing mechanisms for when the dialogue fails, I think there are a series of mechanisms which are the same as for failure of dialogue in families and communities, etc. But here are what they are. One of the important things is to maintain as many channels of communication as possible. Some channels may break down, but at least if you have multiple channels, there is a better chance. Respect in language, even at a time of great strain and great stress. To recognize that the other partner may have some things which are just simply not negotiable at that time, or at any time. As somebody reminded us of John 23rd, at times of great stress in a dialogue, place the emphasis, look for what unites us, and leave the others to wait until they can be dealt with. And finally, accept that in an ongoing dialogue, and this can happen in a family as well, at different times, it's not going to be exactly equal in terms of reciprocity. One or the other partner may have a greater sway, but in a very long term, we're talking about centuries, even for the Red Cross. So accept that perhaps now you're a little bit down, next time you might be a little bit up. I hope that's helpful. But it's not a kind of concrete, mechanical. I'm a great believer in the virtues. I think the virtues for dialogue, patience, respect, resilience, and prudence, they're very important. The second question was from, I hope that's enough. I'll be as quick as I can.
Yes,
the second point was from Fatima.
Yes, from our community here. Professor, thanks for your very good input. Do you know how are the Red Cross authorities elected in China and who appoints them?
Thank you. I did know, I do not now know. And with most Red Cross societies or authorities, there are different levels. For example, there may be a top level, which is some notable public figure, but they don't have any direct influence. No, I don't know. I'll better say that. Okay. And the next question, sorry for that one, was from Jimmy Sherman again.
Okay, thank you. And then we have one more now, the question to Dr. Cynthia. How to achieve inclusiveness, openness, and mutual learning? Did you answer that question already?
No.
Not yet. Okay. Yes.
If we were living in a neighborhood, although I've been working on the answers, I have been trying to listen to Cynthia at the same time. If we were working in a neighborhood, the first thing I would do is share food with the neighbors. We have a custom in Australia, by the way, I look like sharing food too. The custom in Australia would be you put on a barbecue and you invite people. The custom in Malaysia might be at Ramadan, you put your food out in the front veranda for even passers-by to share. So not just food, but the inclusiveness, the openness is to share what you have. For example, to come to the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, when the Chinese Red Cross was not really organized for the pandemic, it was the Canadian Red Cross which was supplying special ambulances to China. By contrast, a year or two later, it was China which was able to supply equipment, vaccines to India. So if you are constantly sharing your resources, sharing your ideas, sharing openly as much as you can, sharing your equipment, then you are more likely to achieve some kind of inclusiveness. That is the best example I can give in just a moment. Okay, is that helpful?
Okay, thank you very much. Now we move to the question that was formulated by Father Fernando to Dr. Cynthia. In Hong Kong, you probably see that question. I will read aloud so that everybody can hear that again. In Hong Kong, most of the people live in monoblocks, which limit the contact with each other and with the soil. Do you have any idea how building can become more humane in terms of new architectural models, developing more spaces for mutual contacts and with nature?
Yes. Actually, it's in this book. Let me see. Oh, you can't see this book. Oh, okay. With the book that I talked about, Remade in Hong Kong, they have an example case history of a building in Wan Chai, building a block of several buildings in Wan Chai, where these are old buildings, dilapidated. But what they tried to do at first, they would the authorities were just going to raise them and and build new taller buildings in place, because after all, it's prime spot commands a lot of money. But what happened was it was really from ground up. People in the community were saying, we don't want to be moved elsewhere. And we certainly cannot afford the multi-million-dollar. So it's also by, learning together and organizing together, even though, for the most part, the average citizen does not really have a say in how the neighborhood is going to be developed. But there are times when people come together and able to exert some influence. And they were able to, in that case, redevelop those places into, modern living quarters that, because they are higher buildings, they are able to sell some of the property, but they also are able to subsidize some of the old tenants and allow them to move back. So this is an example of a more diverse urban neighborhood now. On a very small scale, but it's something that I guess we in Hong Kong have to keep on learning to do, because right now I think the legal channels, the political channels are not very open. So you have to find, so a lot of the community organizing that I mentioned just now, it's a learning process for us.
Okay, thank you very much. We are almost reaching the conclusion, the end of this session. Is there anyone who would like to add something, and the last comment or maybe short question? So please do so. If not, we are closing this session soon. So give your hand and please applause our speakers today. Thank you very much for the participation of all the participants today, and welcome for tomorrow's session, the third day, Saturday at 4 o'clock. We continue the next session, and most welcome to join us again. Thank you very much and good night.